Another Overwatch League regular season tournament is now in the history books. In some aspects, the Summer Showdown did not disappoint in the slightest. The sheer amount of upsets early on made for some very interesting storylines, not to mention that they completely ruined my bracket, which we can all get a good laugh out of now. Along with some quality Overwatch though, there were also lessons to be learned from every team. The significance ranges from team to team, but there was definitely at least one thing I learned about every team. Because you guys really seem to like the one thing I learned video for the May Melee, I thought I'd bring this type of video back again. So here's one thing I learned about every team from the Summer Showdown tournament. Let's go in order of elimination. The Dallas Fuel. You lost to a good team, but I'm a little worried about your future. So coming into this tournament, I can't really say I had high expectations for the Fuel. Getting matched up with Paris is kind of just tough luck, you know? Based on how the other high seeds performed in this tournament, it's kind of a feels bad moment for them. They might have been able to win if they played literally anybody else, but life is cruel sometimes, nothing you can really do about it. However, I cannot help but worry about Dallas when looking ahead. They desperately need wins, and getting knocked out early in these tournaments feels like a wasted opportunity. It's low risk, high reward. These games won't count towards your losses, but they will count towards your wins potentially. Dallas is trying to play catch up still. They're a game behind still when it comes to being in contention for a top 12 spot. Again, I can't blame them for not advancing given the opponents they faced in these things, but they still do deserve some of the blame. If they did a better job in the qualifiers, then that could have been the difference maker. Given some of the winnable games on their schedule ahead though, there still is plenty of time to gain some ground. But if some of the teams ahead of them keep winning, then it's not going to matter. Hence why getting a bonus win could be huge. They're so close to their goal, but they need to play better starting right now or it's curtains. The Florida Mayhem. Your reign of terror is over. For now. I don't want to assume anything just because this team has so much potential, but the May Melee Finals may have been this team's peak for the time being. Since that amazing run, their play has slowly but surely gotten sloppier, and the L they took to the Outlaws is prime evidence of this. I mean, let's call it how it is. They got completely outplayed. There were times throughout that series where Florida straight up did not play well. It's almost as if these teams are starting to catch on. They seem a lot more predictable. It started with the Valiant game, and it's only gotten worse in their two matches with Houston. From what I've seen, they play very close together, and teams are straight up taking advantage of this playstyle. Florida needs to take a good look at themselves during this off week to figure out what has been going wrong. Their level of play is going way down with every passing week. They have to wake up before the playoffs roll around, or they're going to end the season on the wrong foot. The Los Angeles Valiant. Your momentum is dead. After the game they played against Toronto, it is more than safe to say there's some problems going on over there right now. Besides playing bad, we have to address the whole lineup thing. Gig at main tank and apply on main support is a giant red flag right away. The Valiant don't feel like the type of team to play what doesn't work for them, so that's how you know something is probably up. And the Valiant themselves made that abundantly clear. It started with Packing 10 saying that Gig and Apply came in suddenly because the team was pretty concerned about their players' health. Then McGravy and a few others made it clear that the team was definitely dealing with some stuff over in their Discord. And before you say it, no. The rumor of Lastro being toxic or having behavior issues is false. Lastro confirmed that himself. I have no clue what the problem is, but the Valiant made it crystal clear that they had a very bad week. Whatever they've been dealing with has to be pretty serious though if it's going to affect their play this much. No discredit to Toronto, they definitely did play well, but I for one don't think the Valiant were anywhere near 100%. Many of their players were straight up boomed. Not to mention that Apply hasn't touched Brigitte since GOATS. This was not a winnable game for them. My one hope is that they resolve these issues sooner rather than later though. They've been doing so well as of late, and right now they're in a decent position to at least qualify for the end of year play-in tournament. They were looking so confident, but now I fear that all is lost. It would be a shame if they go on a bad losing streak and miss out on playing in September. I'm really worried, I'll be the first to admit it. The Valiant are going through some serious stuff, and if they don't find answers soon, then their season is as good as over. The level of play they exemplified against Toronto is not going to cut it. The Los Angeles Gladiators. You're getting worse by the week. What is there to be said about these guys that I haven't already brought up? I've thoroughly discussed what I think is wrong with them a few weeks ago, and the same things are still present. I'm used to them not being all that impressive, but this felt like a fatal blow. They didn't just lose to Washington, they got crushed badly in the second half of that series, and that to me is pretty terrifying. I know the Justice have steadily been improving, but this is a team they should beat. I mean, they literally did beat the same team just 1 week prior in the same exact meta. The Gladiators are hitting their lowest of lows, and this is definitely the worst loss they have suffered all season in my opinion. Getting beat by a team that has lived and died by Genji is tough to swallow. Everybody needs to do better. This team seems way too dependent on unique strategies, and if they can't win through the basics, then they're doomed. The Chengdu Hunters, you're still bad. I know it may sound harsh, but it's the truth. The Chengdu Hunters are a complete mess. There is no structure over there. After a somewhat decent start to their season, they have gone past the point of no return. If I'm going to be honest, their season is basically over. Nothing is clicking. They rely way too much on chaos. If they can't throw their opponent off guard, they get rolled. And even when they do successfully do this, they can never close out a series. I don't even know what they could do to improve at this point. The coaching is strange, the players are inconsistent, and it feels like this team relies way too much on individual plays rather than a coordinated team effort. And to be honest, I doubt they do much better even if they played in North America. At this point, there is no saving them. Their current system does not work. No meta seems to be a comfortable fit. When they can't get Wrecking Ball, Pharah, Genji comps, or any of the wacky stuff they like to play, they look completely lost. GG. Time to look towards Season 4, I guess. The London Spitfire. You still have much to learn. I'll be the first to say it. I probably put too much faith in this London team. I know they've been playing a lot better as of late, but they've only really beaten the struggling teams. When it comes to beating serious competition, they usually come up short, and Playoff Seoul is a team you definitely have to put in this category. On map 2 and 3, they did quite well in the series, but on the opening and closing map, they simply got outplayed. Prophet's sheer determination to not lose to his old team was too much. This young team has so much potential, but realizing said potential is going to be a challenge. Consistency is still something they are lacking, and if they want to maximize their chances of finishing in the top 12, then they have to work hard to figure this out. They're making progress for sure, but it's nothing that will seriously make other teams in the league fear them. That's the next obstacle they have to overcome. The Hangzhou Spark. Your growing pains are more serious than I thought. The Spark are in quite the strange position. After looking so promising in their first week with Architect and Kyoku being fielded, everything has kind of fallen apart. On paper, this team is absurdly talented, but for some reason they can't piece it together right now. From what I've noticed, everybody doesn't gel together perfectly just yet, and it doesn't help that they can't figure out this meta to save their lives. A certain amount of blame definitely deserves to be directed towards the coaches. Everyone needs to try harder moving forward. A total team effort is going to be needed to overcome the slump they've fallen into. I'm confident they'll figure it out eventually, but when it happens exactly feels pretty up in the air. Maybe they'll do better when we have hero pools again. This is definitely a team to monitor closely over the next several weeks. They have the potential to be one of the strongest teams in the league. Let's see if they can hit their stride or not. The Vancouver Titans. You are making satisfactory progress. Say what you want about them beating Dallas and Boston to get here, but they still were a top 4 seed at the end of the day, and that's worthy of praise. Sure, they got eliminated by Paris in the quarterfinals, and they lost the chance to get a needed bonus win, but that's okay. The fact that they even made it here to begin with is good enough for me. I would have called you crazy if you told me Vancouver was going to be a top 4 seed before the qualifiers. And it's not like every map in that Paris series was a complete stomp. They put up a good fight in the first half. And that gives me reason to be positive about a team that I did not put much faith in. Vancouver's schedule from here on out has a lot of difficult weeks in it, so the likelihood of them winning a ton is small, but who knows? Maybe they'll start really hitting their stride after the break. There's still a glimmer of hope out there for all my Vancouver fans watching. If they keep steadily improving like they have been, then who knows what could happen. A top 12 finish is looking less and less ridiculous, and after the crazy events that unfolded in this tournament, anything is possible. The Atlanta Reign. You are the disappointment of the year frontrunner. Oh, Atlanta, when will you stop giving your fans so much pain? It's tough to watch. A team that has so much promise continues to vastly underperform. This team is way too talented for this. I am truly amazed at this team's shortcomings. At first, I only really focused on the fact that they could never be any good competition, but that's something I can no longer limit my viewpoint to. Losing in general makes this team go into full-on panic. Did you guys know that Atlanta have never won a game in which they've dropped a map? Not once. Every match they have won this year has come against a weak team in clean sweep fashion. The moment anything goes wrong for them in a series, they just lose. It's as if they have no confidence in themselves. What are adjustments? What are second half adaptations? What is mental fortitude? I don't get it, man. How can a team with such a loaded roster on paper be so incapable of winning a close game? Many will continue to look at the coaching staff as the big problem, and I completely agree. It's undeniable that Sefi and his staff are letting the whole team down. They are failing to force their team out of bad habits. This team has all the tools necessary to be good. So my question to the Atlanta coaching staff is, what's your excuse? Why can't you post good results? I'm quite worried about the Atlanta Reign. They're steadily declining, and it often feels like Edison has to carry them to relevance. The next month or so is going to make or break this team. Let's see if they figure something out. The Washington Justice. Your midseason decision is starting to gain traction, so the Justice definitely made some good strides over the last few weeks. Qualifying for the tournament, then winning their knockout round matchup was a wonderful sight. I'm happy to see this team making meaningful progress. This team has been putting in long hours every single day. They are very motivated to improve, and now that hard work is finally paying off. I mean, they boomed the Gladiators. Tupa's Genji was way too much. The run was bound to come to an end after this match because they had the pleasure of taking on the Shock, but there's no shame in that. The fact that they made it this far to begin with is something to feel confident about if you're the Washington Justice. Your team is starting to come into their own. It's starting to feel like they have an identity. Through the explosive play of Tuba and Janu, the Justice have found a potential recipe for success. The one thing that worries me though is that they could be over-reliant on the Genji. It's the only time Tuba has consistently looked good, and I'm worried that the team could take a step or two backwards if this proves to be the case, but we'll have to see. Time will tell. The Houston Outlaws. The hydration experiment is a massive success. I have to say, this change at main tank for the Houston Outlaws really seems to be what they needed to turn around their season potentially. I can't really say the same about his Reiner Winston just yet, but hydration has been pretty clean on the Orisa. It's not even a question that he has been synergizing a million times better with Meko than Muma did. As a result, Meko has really been tearing it up lately. He's back to top form like in his NYXL glory days. His Sigma has been unreal, and his consistency has kept Houston in a lot of games. Not to mention that the Outlaws DPS are tremendously benefiting from this meta. Tracer Widow and Tracer Ashe is literally the most ideal thing for them because it greatly plays up to the strengths of Dante and Linkser. As a result, they've helped balance the load with Meko, giving Houston 3 primary playmakers. It helps that they get to run their strongest support line too. Taking out Florida and putting up a decent fight against Philly speaks volumes about this team's potential currently. In my opinion, it's perfectly reasonable to consider them a top 5 or 6 team in the North American region. The Seoul Dynasty. You aren't quite ready to take down the big boys yet. Sorry Seoul fans, but there's no tournament magic to be found this time. Credit goes where it's due for beating London, but they are clearly still behind the top teams in Asia. They're probably top 4 at best currently. And let's not forget about the Dragons continuing to be that obstacle that Seoul cannot overcome. Shanghai are Seoul's bugaboo in tournaments. Simple as that. Generally speaking though, it's the same old story with this Dynasty team. Play through your tanks and hope that Profit does something. When this strategy proves to be ineffective, they just lose. I have to say though, I like that they tried to implement Slime into the lineup. I love his aggressive playstyle, and it's very well suited for a meta like this one. I'm hoping this isn't a one-time thing though. The Dynasty have become easy for teams to get a read on, and Slime might be able to assist in changing that with more aggression. A style change plus a few other minor adjustments to the lineup could lead to a big payoff. The New York Excelsior. I'm officially done picking you to go far in tournaments. Why on earth did I put so much faith in New York? What was I thinking? God, I'm so mad at myself for going back on my word. It was around this time last year that I swore to myself I was done with them, but I gave into temptation. Them having Hoxlaw and Genji sounded too sexy on paper. I wanted to forgive and forget. This year, I've made the mistake of assuming certain players and teams couldn't improve based off of the past, so I wanted to give the NYXL a second chance. I didn't want to keep on making the same mistake that hindered me from growing as an armchair wannabe analyst. And what does New York do with this newfound trust? They lit it on fire, tore it into pieces, threw it out the window, then lit it back on fire for good measure. What a disappointment. I understand that the Charge are incredible and that some maps were kind of close, but come on. You couldn't even take a single map with that amazing lineup of yours? It breaks my heart to see them do this again. How many times have we seen them either choke or vastly underperform in a tournament now? I'm done believing in them for any sort of regular season tournament. I'm over it. Congrats, New York. You are the undisputed number 3 team in the APAC region. Sorry if it sounds like I'm being toxic. I don't mean for it to come off that way. I'm not mad and I'm not trying to hate. I'm just disappointed that they couldn't overcome the habits of their old ways. The Toronto Defiant. You are improving, but by how much has yet to be determined. I can safely say that I'm not the only one who was pleasantly surprised by how the Toronto Defiant performed in this tournament. With Genji in play, this was certainly their ideal meta, but playing the Valiant and Rain gave me doubts on how successful they could be, but they put those doubts of mine to bed really quick. The Valiant were most definitely not at full strength during that matchup, but I still give Toronto credit for playing a complete game where they showed good composure whenever things got tough. I'm impressed with the Atlanta win more than anything else though. That was the team that constantly gave them trouble. Before Saturday, they weren't able to take a single map off of them in 3 different meetings. It seemed as if the Rain had them figured out and that they'd always be nothing more than a punching bag for them. They overcame their demons though and were ultimately rewarded for their efforts with a bonus win. Losing to Philly in the semis was tough to watch, but there's no shame there. At the end of the day, they still did get top 4 and they got a needed bonus win that will help them keep pace in the playoff race. I'm happy for Toronto and their fans. A Genji meta was just what they needed. The team as a whole seems to be clicking right now. Agilities can finally shine brightly on a signature hero. Meanwhile, the backline has been providing some exceptional heals, and Numlocked has continuously been improving his play with his new teammates. But how long can it last? If Genji were to get nerfed or suddenly not be a meta pick, would Toronto be able to maintain this level? That is the question. The San Francisco Shock. You are untouchable. Heading into this tournament, the common consensus was that nobody stood a chance of beating the Shock. Since they won the May Melee, they've been showing this absurdly high level of dominance. Between the explosive DPS, the consistent tank play, and the godlike support, it was hard to realistically see them losing at all. It was close until the very end, but Paris showed them that they are not the clear-cut favorites of the North American region anymore. This is a serious wake-up call. Even the Shock are human. Dealing with the mentally draining season while trying to maintain a level of excellence can even take a toll on god-tier reigning champs. Based on what I've seen from Smurf and Choyobin on social media, some of the players on that team are mentally exhausted, and that's totally fair. I can't blame them. Let's call it how it is. This season is not what it was promised to be. COVID-19 destroyed the initial plan set in place, and it significantly changed how the schedule works. With teams having to play pretty much every week, there's not much downtime besides the weeks off they get from these tournaments. It can really take a toll on you. This especially goes for all of the players who are living in a foreign territory. These guys might be feeling pretty burnt out or stressed, and now they get little to no time to go home and relax their minds. It's tough, and I certainly feel bad for them. With that said, I hope everything goes okay for the Shock players. I'd hate to see anything bad happen to them. Also, I'm not exactly sure what events will transpire because of it, but the Shock are hosting open tryouts for their team. It could just be that they want another player on their roster, but I'm a little worried there could be more behind it. The Shock are heading in a weird direction, and there's definitely room for minor concerns. The Shanghai Dragons. You are a weird team in any sort of final scenario. As successful as the Shanghai Dragons have been this year, it doesn't always translate to these super clean and satisfying performances. For some reason, whenever they reach the finals of these regular season tournaments, they become super vulnerable. It's like they turn their brains off, or maybe they get really nervous, I guess. It's like the NYXL in any sort of tournament. Whenever the Dragons get to this position, they get extremely nervous and get off to a cold start. This makes 2 times in a row now where they started the finals down 3-0. That's insane, and both times followed the same type of formula. You play DM on the first few maps you lose, then you bring in Lip and you start making a comeback. This has been the one noticeable flaw in the Shanghai Dragons this year: roster decisions. I understand that it worked fine when they played DM against Seoul, but you have to be able to know when enough is enough. The team's play looked a lot more organized when they could depend on Lip in that game. He gave the team life. And what does he get as a reward for helping to bring his team back into that series? A one-way ticket back to the bench. Don't get me wrong, I completely understand the appeal of playing DM in this meta. You're playing a lot of Widowmaker, and she happens to be one of his specialties. It makes sense to play him on Widow-centric metas, but sometimes you can't always stick to what makes sense and just be logical all the time. Desperate times do call for desperate measures. The guy that gave your lineup life got casted aside, and while I can't say for certain if it changes Shanghai's destiny in that game, I can't help but feel like their chances definitely would have been better. If the Shanghai Dragons want to be title contenders come September, then they have to overcome this weakness. They need to find a way to get out of their own heads. Do whatever it takes, or it might just cost you what you desire the most, which is winning a championship. The Philadelphia Fusion. This team is cursed. My condolences go out to any of my Philly fans watching. Once again, you get some sort of accolade snatched right from your hands. This is now the 3rd time in league history they have lost in some sort of finals match. There's the Stage 2 finals in 2018, the Grand Finals later that year, and now the Summer Showdown. I'm sure you guys are hurting right now, and all I can say is I'm sorry. That's tough. But hey, You guys should be proud of how your team played. Not many people were giving you a shot of winning the finals. I thought you would surely lose whether you were playing the Shock or Eternal, and you nearly made me regret that. They were in that series until the bitter end. The players on the Fusion poured their heart and soul into that finals. The look on their faces when they came up short says it all. They wanted that badly, and the reality of them losing was hard to handle. I feel so bad for Carpe. It doesn't matter how good he plays, him and his team can never get it done, and he took it hard, as he understandably should have, as he shed a few tears. Whether you are a fan of this team or you're part of the org in some way, feel proud of your efforts. The fight they showed is quite admirable. Everybody tried their best to bring that home. Carpe and EQO played like madmen, and they were so close too. After a performance like that, it's clear the Fusion aren't going anywhere. They are still right up there with the Shock in Paris. They are still one of the best teams in the league. Even if they missed out on glory now, there's always the tournament in August and the end of season playoffs. Keep your head up, Philly. It's not over. The Guangzhou Charge. I need to start taking you more seriously. Man, what a run by the Charge. This team is ridiculously hot. They haven't lost a game since the May Melee. They've leveled up significantly. Strangely enough, all it took was Happy getting hot and Eileen becoming a full-time starter for them to make this much progress. I think I owe the Charge an apology. I really did believe that they were bound to cool off during this tournament, but they honestly did nothing of the sort. They have continued to assert their dominance, and not even Shanghai could stop them. Coming into Season 3, I had a lot of faith in this Charge roster. I loved how solid they were looking at the end of Season 2, and I truly thought they were a top 7 team this year. But as it turns out, top 7 is disrespectful. They are better than that, and you can't rule them out as potential title contenders now. If they keep this level of play up, then it's going to be tough to stop them. Before moving on, I wanted to give a shout out to the Charge players who made this run possible. First off, I have to give more praise to Happy and Eileen. Right now, they are probably a top 5 DPS duo. Happy has been lights out on the hit scan role, and Eileen has become a true superstar in the league. Is it crazy to call him the best non-Korean DPS right now? No, not at all. Nero not being able to play Overwatch because of his visa renewal left him with an opportunity to earn a full-time starting spot on the roster, and he fearlessly took on the pressure of filling in the shoes left behind by him, and he hasn't looked back. Right now, he is the better option. Good on Eileen. Then, of course, there's also the consistent play of Rio, Shu, and Chara. You guys rock. You give this team a pillar to lean on every single game. And who could forget about Krong, who has been the shining star of this Guangzhou team over the last 6 weeks or so. While I always liked the play of Krong since his first game this year, I thought of him as nothing more than a potential top 10 rookie and a solid off-tank. But now I see how disrespectful that was. Not only is Krong one of the best rookies, but he's absolutely one of the best players at the off-tank position currently. Forget Rookie of the Year. He might even be a sleeper pick for MVP. Big congrats goes out to the Charge. The summer tournament has been a booming success in more ways than one, and you're getting the attention you rightfully deserve. And finally, the Paris Eternal. This team has limitless potential. Over the weekend, we witnessed what a full-strength Paris team is capable of. What a terrifying sight. The power of their rookies plus the veteran presence they have has made for a deadly combination. This team is really starting to come into their own, and they've shown me how nasty they can be when the meta plays up to the comfort of their superstar DPS. Everybody on this team is great. The supports are insanely dominant. Hanbin brings the synergy with his former Element Mystic teammates, and Ben Best is one of the current most improved player frontrunners. But the real stars of the show have to be their DPS. The dynamic duo of Sparkle and Exy is truly special. Between the synergy and overall explosiveness, they have what it takes to contest any DPS duo in the Overwatch League. This dynamic duo complements each other way too well. They have perfect load management. A lot of the time, Exy is finding the opening pick that they need on the Widow, while Sparkle cleans the rest up. But sometimes the role is reversed. But in general, I like to think of Sparkle as the primary playmaker with his ridiculous Genji mechanics and ability to charge Blade almost instantly, while Exy is kind of there to provide support or take over if the enemy team focuses too much on Sparkle. They remind me a lot of some of the all-time great duos we've seen in this league. They have a recipe for success over there in Paris. But I can't help but wonder how things will go if there's no Genji in the meta suddenly. I personally think the big reason they beat the Shock and Philly to begin with is because of this meta. That is going to be the big test for the Paris Eternal moving forward. Now they have to prove themselves in other metas. Let's see if they can find other ways to incorporate Sparkle into the game plan or even win without him if need be. That's the big question mark for the Paris Eternal. If they can prove this is a level they can sustain, then I'll have no doubt in my mind that they're one of the favorites to win the title. If not, they may be taking a back seat to some of the other teams again. Regardless, big congrats goes out to the Paris Eternal on this win. The North American region is wide open for the time being. Well, there you go, guys. That is one thing I learned about every team from the Summer Showdown tournament. This event was crazy successful, and I can only hope the next tournament gives us similar results. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, then I would appreciate it a lot if you could like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to further support me, then consider following me on Twitter at ATP Overwatch, joining the Discord through the link in the description, or becoming a channel member by hitting that join button. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.